So we're joined now by our RA faculty for our mid-meeting recap. We're joined by John Kay from Massachusetts and Kathryn Dao from Texas. Hi, folks.
Hello.
Hey, Jack. Hi, Artie.
So the perfunctory beginning of what do you think of the meeting so far, John?
Well, it's very different. I have not left my house. I've not left my office other than for dinner. I've not put the 10,000 steps on every day, but you can get from session to session very easily. The other nice thing is that you can see a session after it's occurred. At the annual meeting when it's live, if you miss a session, tough luck. But here you can go in and look at it at your convenience again and again. There was a session today, Gerd Burmester talked about the history of biologics, and he had a slide about serendipity. And I missed the serendipity of walking through the exhibit hall, and not just meeting friends and other people whom I've not had the privilege of meeting before, but also passing by a poster that I didn't expect to look at and learning something and piquing my interest. So the fact that you're limited to seeing those things that you seek out limits the educational experience somewhat.
Kathryn, what did you tweet today about serendipity?
Oh, that basically when you're trying something for one thing and it ends up you're finding out something else. It's kind of like you stumbling onto me.
Well, that's because you're petite and I stumbled over you actually on rounds one day.
That is true. No, but I agree with John. I mean, I actually like the virtual format, but next time I'm gonna get a hotel room and expense it to you, because like my kids keep busting in. They're like, what's for lunch? What's for dinner? And I'm just like, leave me alone. Leave me alone. I'm in the middle of videoing.
Artie, how are you handling that with your boys?
It's tough. I mean, it's everybody's doing much more stuff at home. And I guess the question I put to the panelists is, EULAR announced they're going to be hybrid. So would you all, all things being equal now, would you say, you know what, this virtual is pretty good? Or no, I miss going poster to poster and, just meeting old friends and stuff. What are you going to do?
I'm old fashioned. I'd like to attend in person because I do like to give hugs. I like to, get the freebies. And I just, not only that, get this, I'm actually got vaccinated, or I'm in the vaccine trial now for COVID-19. Yeah. And so hopefully I did get the real thing. I mean, the first injection went well. I haven't grown an extra head yet, but I think so far so good. I'll get my second injection in a few weeks.
We'll be looking for that.
Jonathan, were you going to go to EULAR, or are you going to this virtual thing hook you?
Oh, surprisingly, I haven't been on an airplane since March 7th, and I've forgotten what it's like to get frequent flyer miles. It all depends on how safe or unsafe it is. But aside from that, the Europeans probably won't let us in. It'll depend on public health. Will travel bans still be in place? My institution won't let us travel. If we travel outside of the country or even to an unsafe state or have to take an airplane flight, we have to quarantine for 14 days on our own time.
Yeah. Let's get into RA. And you guys have been covering RA. There's been a lot happening at this meeting so far. Let's start with something that's really impressed you. Kathryn?
Well, I think it started out with the great debate. We have Vibeke Strand and then we have Michael Weinblatt. I mean, it was a beautiful discussion. And the audience actually, so discussion was basically after methotrexate failure in a patient with rheumatoid arthritis, what do you do next? Would you go straight for a JAK inhibitor or would you go for a TNF inhibitor, right? And so they each presented their case, Vibeke Strand was like, well, it's oral, it's quick on, quick off. It has great efficacy. I mean, just as good of an efficacy as TNF inhibitors. And yeah, it can cause shingles. Yeah, it can cause VTEs and MACE if you use a higher dose. And then here comes Weinblatt coming in. He's like, one word, 22 years of experience. And so, and I don't know whether that is trying to scare us because we're afraid of the new and we want to stick with the old, you know. But he has a point, you know, it's something that we're familiar with. Yes, insurance is going to cover a TNF inhibitor before they're going to cover like a small molecule in certain states. You can use it in pregnancy. There's multiple indications, anything from rheumatoid arthritis to uveitis, SPA to hidradenitis, and now immune adverse events from checkpoint inhibitor therapy. So, I mean, yes, there's a lot of use. So that begs the question, like, what would you do? And that's something that I kept in mind throughout the last few days that I've been at ACR, because I'm coming across these really good posters, you know, posters about like, you know, there's a meta-analysis on head-to-head JAK inhibitors that they're looking at systematic reviews from UT Southwestern, and they're talking about how, you know, they're comparing UPA, Berry, Tofa, and filgotinib to like the TNF inhibitors, and they found that perhaps UPA and okay, Jack, you got your hand raised. Tell me.
You're way over 45 seconds.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm so excited about this. This is awesome.
Well, I control but I want to tell you one thing. Michael at Room Now Live that Artie and I run was asked on a panel that is with John O'Shea and other RA experts, what drug are you going to give your mother or your sister? Methotrexate, a TNF inhibitor, or a JAK inhibitor? Everybody in the panel said a JAK inhibitor. And they weren't necessarily, I can't reason why they would be forced to say that. But so I found it interesting that Michael's arguing the other point, which really feeds into the rheumatologists who always want to use TNF inhibitors. But let's move on. John, what did you like that so far at the meeting?
Well, there have been a whole bunch of interesting things. I think that it's the year of the lung. You've got a couple of abstracts about rheumatoid arthritis, interstitial lung disease. Jeff Sparks presented an abstract that showed that ILD was more prevalent among older patients with rheumatoid arthritis. He also presented a oral presentation where anti-citrulline filaggrin antibodies seem to be a biomarker for the development of interstitial lung disease. A talk that I'm looking forward to tomorrow at the plenary session looks at citrulline reactive B cells in the lungs of patients with early rheumatoid arthritis and at risk rheumatoid arthritis. So the lung is sort of the alpha and the omega. It's the organ in which rheumatoid arthritis might start, and it's the end result of established rheumatoid arthritis. So the lung is really becoming a rather prominent topic at this meeting.
You know, Jeff, he did last year at ACR his own brass review showing a lot of lung stuff in ILD. And this was a claims-based review where he showed all that stuff where lung is seen, it was 5% of the population claims data, but it was associated with death, you know, and infectious death, cancer death, but most of all respiratory deaths. So it's a really bad player.
Absolutely.
The abstract today by Jeff, and I think both of you may have hopefully saw that, the RA seam, the tapering etanercept, and that generated a lot of interest. Some of it about what background Jeff was using, what Castle was the formation of the background for his Zoom call. But what did y'all get to see that? What did you think? It's tapering methotrexate versus tapering etanercept in people on combination. That was, I think, really a very definitive study on tapering, which is a very important topic.
Absolutely. I did a video for Room Now today, so I'll give a plug for that if people want a more in-depth discussion of that abstract. Tapering is a theme at this meeting. On Monday, there's the Norwegian study, which looked at stable versus tapered TNF inhibitors in patients with rheumatoid arthritis who are in remission. Jeff's study sort of follows on the PRESERVE trial and the PRIZE trial, which looked at tapering versus discontinuing either etanercept or methotrexate. Jeff's study was different from those. Those studies looked at patients with low disease activity or remission rheumatoid arthritis. Jeff's study looked at patients who were in SDI remission, stable SDI remission. The definition of the activity was patients with very well controlled rheumatoid arthritis. There wasn't a strict definition of control at the time of entry, but he showed very nicely that getting rid of the methotrexate was the better way to go, that if you stop methotrexate, the etanercept continuation as monotherapy seemed to control remission or continuation of both, but much better than if you stop the more expensive etanercept. So the bias is always to try to stop the more expensive drug, but here the better outcome comes when you stop the methotrexate.
Well, if you look at patients too, I mean, what would they prefer? Most of my patients prefer to stay on etanercept and stop their methotrexate because, you know, it's convenient, it has less side effects. They're not losing their hair. They're not having like some of the oral side effects, nausea, vomiting, and having to have their blood monitored every 3 to 4 months.
Well, my patients like it because they can drink alcohol.
Oh, my patients don't drink. They're good.
Yeah.
Well, they're Texans.
So it's about a couple of minutes left. I know you all have your schedules planned out thoroughly. What are you very excited about seeing in the remaining couple of days of the meeting?
Well, there's more to see than there's time to see it. Certainly the ACR rheumatoid arthritis management guidelines, which are going to be presented on Monday, are going to be very interesting. It's not necessarily going to be novel, but it's going to be a synthesis of past knowledge. There's a session on Monday about predictors of rheumatoid arthritis responses, where there's a Mayo Clinic study that used machine learning to look at pharmacogenomics to come up with an algorithm for methotrexate response. This is a theme where machine learning is being used to do a lot of things. There was a great abstract on Friday looking at machine learning to read hand x-rays and look at joint space narrowing. Really very elegant study out of Taiwan that might actually give us the sharp scores that radiologists are reluctant to do because of the lack of time. There's another abstract on Monday using machine learning to determine a rule to predict response to sarilumab. Ernest Choi, Peter Taylor's looking at whole blood transcriptional changes following filgotinib administration. And then, as I mentioned before, there's that tapering study out of Norway that's going to be presented. So there's lots of good stuff. And on Sunday, the plenary abstract about citrulline reactive B cells in the lung. And then an interesting session at 3 p.m. where Ron Van Vollenhoven, Peter Taylor, and Mike Hollers are going to talk about resetting immune tolerance to prevent rheumatoid arthritis. So really, we've come a long way since the first ACR meeting that I attended in 1986, where we didn't have biologics, and we certainly weren't talking about remission, and we weren't talking about prevention. So it's a very exciting world that we're entering.
Kathryn, what are you looking forward to?
Well, tomorrow, I mean, early in the morning, they have the Thieves Market poster. And, you know, I'm like a sucker for good titles. They have titles like Disease of the Soul, Think Beyond the Obvious, and Practice What You Preach. I mean, come on, that's such a grabber. And then afterwards, I want to attend this lupus lecture, actually. It's the state-of-the-art lecture, The Future is Now, presented by Dr. Mary Crow. They also have a conflict around that same time about the EULAR treatment recommendations for RA, psoriatic arthritis, and whether or not you should follow algorithms in your clinical practice. And then on Monday, I'm going to definitely attend the guidelines for RA, JIA, and also the FDA update on safety.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that is going to be presented. Is there anything that you wish was going to be presented that's not on the program? 10-second answer for either of you?
Is John still there? Did he?
I'm still here. You left me speechless.
Okay.
There's so much on, well, there's not a lot on biosimilars this year. But I'm not sure how much more there would be to present about biosimilars, given the reluctance of the United States to allow us to use them.
It's going down every year. Artie and I have just been tracking it. It's
19 this year, down from about 25 last year, abstracts.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we want to thank John Kay and Kathryn Dao for joining us.